I'm 40 years old, I'm still single, I've never been married, and I don't have any kids. The question I get asked all the time is, do I want to have kids? Then the conversation usually turns into someone telling me that if I want to have kids, I'm going to have to change some pretty key things about the way I'm living my life. So I decided to take some time out to think through the question of whether I really want to have kids or not, and this video is the result. I've come to a pretty clear conclusion for myself, and I think it's useful to share my thought process on how I've arrived at this clear understanding. So that's what this video is about. To arrive at my conclusion about whether to have kids or not, I'm going to take you through, firstly, my thoughts on marriage in my own life, and then the relationships and the role of relationships for my life satisfaction, and that's going to help me explain my position on having kids. Of course, I think this is something that many of us are facing. We're all facing these various themes, so I hope this video is useful in helping you to think through some of these questions for yourself. I'd love to know your own position in the comments below. Let's start with marriage. For me, I'm pretty clear that I don't want to get married, but we need to separate the desire for having a partner and all of the good things that come from that with what marriage actually is. So for me, I see marriage as an institution of society that's recognized by the government. It formalizes the union. But the key thing about marriage that I see in terms of the historical role of marriage is that we usually repeat vows to each other under the eyes of God, or if you're an atheist, it might be that you undertake your marriage in some sort of ceremonial setting, but you'll usually agree to something like, I will be with this person until death do us part. I can't think of a structure that creates much more damaging expectations than marriage when it imposes the rule that no matter what happens in this relationship, you have to stay with that person until the very end. I think that we always need to preserve a sense of freedom, that we can enter into these unions, we can grow and evolve together, we can be wonderful together, but then it can happen that we can grow apart. And the problem I've got with marriage is that it creates an unhealthy standard by which we feel like we need to judge the success of our relationships. Why can't it be that two people who go through an incredible, let's say 5 years together, they're completely in love, they travel the world together, they support each other in their businesses, they may even start a family together. But why can't it be that after 5 years, if those two people just feel like they need to move on from each other through mutual respect, through loving each other, through wanting the best for each other, through wanting the best for the family they've created, and if they decide to move on, why shouldn't they be able to? And I think that when you've gotten married, it creates a lot more barriers to actually taking that decision to move on when it's for the best to move on. So in my own life, I think that I like the idea of what marriage can represent when it represents a beautiful partnership and something that you commit to for the long term. But I don't think that we need this institution of marriage to make that commitment. Now, the good side of marriage, I think, is the party that you can have, the celebrations that you can have in celebrating the love that you feel for someone, in formalizing that commitment. There can be good things about formalizing the commitment. I love the idea of bringing your close friends and family together for a massive party to celebrate this new step in life. So for me, if I was to meet someone and marriage was important to her, I can totally imagine getting married and doing things in that way. But for me, if I'm really honest about my own deeper desires, it's just not something that drives me. It's not something I feel like I'm missing by not being married. So then I think it's important to reflect on the desire we've got for relationships, because when it comes to having kids or not, I think we can often put the cart before the horse, and we focus so much on this desire we've got to have kids. But really, we can't have kids on our own. Well, we can have kids on our own, and I completely respect people that take that decision for themselves to make that happen. Actually, a really good friend of mine has done that on his own, which is just a heroic decision. But for most of us, we are going to partner up with someone in a beautiful relationship or a beautiful marriage to then have kids with them. So I think that before we get into this discussion of having kids or not, we need to talk about the role of relationships in our lives. And in my case, I've been single definitely for the majority of my adult life. I've grown accustomed to being single. I love the freedom that comes with being single. I love being able to live my life the way I want, to travel the world, to pursue my business opportunities. I feel like that freedom is really important in my life. And I think for many of us, we feel like a relationship is something that can help us fill a gap in our life. And for me, I've taken a very different approach. I've decided many years ago that I don't want to live a life in a way where I'm going to find someone to fill a hole. I don't want to find someone who's going to complete me. I don't believe in the idea of soulmates, that we need to find our soulmate, that we're incomplete without actually finding that key and special person in my life. To me, that feels like a really limiting way to live life. It creates a lot of neediness deep down inside, a lot of codependency, where we kind of build our life in a way, we create these structures in our mind where we have that story, and then we look for evidence that we're going to meet someone who's going to fill that gap. And then we feel so happy to have found that person. But we become incredibly reliant on that person for our happiness, for our sense of satisfaction, because we've created a very strong story, even before we met that person, that this person is what we need in our lives to complete us. So I've made the decision, I'm just not interested in that. But then it comes to the question about relationships, and that there's a whole nother side to life, to experience love, to experience wonderful emotions, wonderful connections with people. So this is the part in my own life that I do feel I need to be more open to, and probably start to make a few changes in how I'm facing up to the potential of relationships, because I do love the idea of meeting someone who's on a similar path in life already. So if I was to meet someone who has similar values, similar ideals, who also is already living her life in a way where she's not looking for someone to complete her, it's like I can almost imagine that you're walking on a path together, two people, and you're facing in the same direction, and you're sort of already on that path, and then you meet up and it just clicks. For me, that's the idea I've got for meeting someone, partnering up in life, co-creating, supporting each other, and it just being a beautiful way of living life without needing to formalize it in the union of marriage. That's the kind of thing that I could imagine fitting in with my life. And then if I was to meet someone like that, and if we were to start to create something really meaningful, really wonderful, only then for me would the question of whether to have kids or not even come up. So I think that's something that for me has been really important. A big realization, because I just turned 40 a few weeks ago, and I've had this question in my mind of, do I want to have kids or not? Maybe I need to change something. And I realized that I'm focusing on completely the wrong thing. I'm focusing on the cart before the horse. The most important thing is about the approach we've got to relationships, to love, to finding someone, to forming that kind of connection. So now this brings up the question of, do I want to have kids? I think when it comes to the desire to have kids, it's something that we're programmed with from a very young age. It feels like that's what society wants of us. That's what the species wants of us. It wants us to regenerate itself, to produce more so that the human species can keep on going. But does that desire to have kids really come from within, or does it come from these external pressures? And in my own case, I thought deeply about it, and I realized that it's just not that important to me. So I've always had it in me that, I think that having kids one day is a good idea. I think it's something that can provide a lot of fulfillment. I think having kids would be wonderful, especially later in life when you're older and you've got younger kids and they're living their lives. Beautiful way of living life. And I know for my own parents that it's contributed to so much fulfillment in their lives, that we've got me and my brothers, we're all very close, and that's wonderful. I'd love to have something similar one day, but I've got to be honest with myself, and it's just not that important to me. Rather than focusing on having kids or not, for me, the better thing to focus on is on the way we want to live our lives, how we can contribute back, how we can move forward with fulfillment. I'd love to find someone who's on a similar path in life and just partner up and just have fun and just go through things together, grow and evolve together. And then I think that if having kids was important to her, then I could imagine that there's room and space for it in my life. So for me, that's the clear conclusion about having kids or not. I'm very clear that the desire is just not there. It's just not very strong, but it's something I'm open to. But rather than focusing on having kids, I think it's more important to focus on the kinds of relationships we want to have in our life and how to make them healthy, wonderful, nurturing, how we can support each other, free from the need for things to be sanctioned in marriage, although that's fine if people want to do it. But we don't need to judge ourselves so heavily for what's going on in our lives and whether we've had kids or not. So I hope this video has been useful to you. Leave a comment below and let me know. Do you want to have kids? What's your own thought process? I'd love to learn more. If you're feeling under pressure right now, if you feel like you're not quite sure where you stand, you're feeling a bit confused, I recommend the Relationships Masterclass on Love and Intimacy on The Vessel. I'm the co-founder of The Vessel. We're curating some of the world's most inspirational, incredible, and authentic and real teachers that are sharing just wonderful knowledge. Link in the description below.